5 o'clock having arrived, we'll officially call the meeting to order. The meeting is properly posted and will be taken.
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 2 are approval of the minutes. 2.1 are approval of the minutes from the February 5th. And the joint meeting minutes from February 20th, 2024.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I vote now?
I think so. Joint. There.
I thought when he said both, I thought he meant
Yeah,
the earlier meeting and the last meeting.
that's what I meant. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 3 are communications. I don't believe we have any other communications, so with that, we'll move on to item number 4, the public hearing review, possible recommendation of KSP Family LLC. 4.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider a planned infill development amendment to the official zoning map for a step 3 general development plan, GDP, at 2525 East Geneva Street, tax parcel XWUP 240, located in the rural holding RH 35AC zoning district to allow for single family resident and outdoor storage land use. Applicant again, KSP Family LLC. So with that, we'll open the public hearing and start with staff.
Yeah, so Jackie is on her way. She might be a little late because she had to pull over on the side of the road. So I did get a text from her on that. Do have the applicant in here today also. This is for the KPS property with the outdoor storage and the single family home residence, the two that they have. This is, as they've said in the past, this is going to be a temporary thing for the next 4 or 5 years until they figure out what they're planning on doing across the street there. So with that, I try to Richard Torres if you guys have specific questions for him, because someone's gonna have the answers for it.
Sounds good. To the petitioner then.
Good evening, Richard Torhorst, counsel for the applicant KSP Family LLC. I did review the agenda report for the items that are before you tonight, and we believe that they set forth our request. There are some of the staff recommendations that we would like to address. One being the 5-year limitation. That was our approximation. I do see that it says that the council may extend it for an additional 5 years. We would like it to be 5 years. We just don't know what the economic conditions will dictate to us, because it's pretty much driven by the development of Harbor Club before we start working on the north property. So I always, in representing municipalities and things, would like it basically to say that that they're saying it for 5 years, and then as an afterthought saying it could be 5 more years, just to approve it, that understanding, not knowing the conditions that the council may consider for another up to 5 years, just so it's not like an afterthought. We come 5 years from now and said, no, it's 5 years and that's it. It wasn't intended to go longer. I just would recommend that the wording be changed so that that is something that was taken into consideration by the staff, and they wouldn't object to that, or you as the plan commission. The other concern we have is with regard to the 2 single-family residences. The request to have or our request to have that remain with the served by well and the sanitary district, or the Delavan Lake Sanitary District, is because those single-family houses are going to be raised when we develop that part. And the issue being that it says that the well failed its safe sampling test. What failed was it had a higher level of nitrates than is recommended, but the amount over was nominal. And we've discussed with Culligan that they can treat that in a couple ways. They can go in and do either a filtering type system, or they could put reverse osmosis in system in the houses, which would eliminate the higher concentration of nitrates. Nitrates are generally not an issue for adults. It's generally an issue that's for small children. The housing here can be used for employees, not the employees' families, but just the employees that work. And generally, there's not going to be younger children that would be residing there. But in either event, it can be treated, and we would agree to treat it and, show that get the systems installed and then test it and show that the nitrates levels have been reduced. So we would like you to consider allowing us to do that. The other issues, our other recommendations, I don't think we had any objection to. The area to the north, which said was agricultural, we didn't include it in there, but a possible expansion area, the staff was saying no to that. At this point, we don't have plans to it. That's why we put possible. I guess we would understand that if you wanted to not include that, we always have the right to come back and say, look, this is what's happening. We would like you to consider that in the future. So we don't want to hold this up or, dispute that. If you choose that that's the better way to go, we understand. We want to work with the city and keep moving forward to come into compliance and be good property owners. Any questions I'd be happy to answer? Did you have anything to add?
It was clarify. Just want to clarify on the water and the sewer hookup. To those 2 residential units, the closest city water and sewer is probably in the neighborhood of 700 to 800 feet away. So from a cost standpoint, as well as something that can be done much quicker, that's why we contacted Culligan in an effort to try to take care of the nitrates. So if there was a time period put on which to get that done, we're certainly fine with that, because we want to make sure that that's right. And any water and sewer that eventually would make its way over, we don't know exactly where those lines would be coming in because of the potential future development over there. So again, this would still be temporary.
Any questions by commissioners for the districts? Yes, Will.
2 questions, I guess. I wasn't exactly sure what your final position on that 5-year limitation was. You kind of seemed like you were arguing both sides of the coin there.
Well,
You
no,
prefer it?
we're not asking for 10. We're just saying that it says that it expires in 5 years. This way, where it expires in 5 years unless the common council decides to continue it or extend it for up to another 5 years. As opposed to saying it expires in 5 years. And by the way, the council has the authority to extend it. I just say, unless, I like to put it as part of unless the council would, agree to extend it, but it's up to the council. We can't just continue going on. We either have to come in and get an extension or be finished or get an extension. I'm trying to just say that the wording, if it's put in upfront, that, you know, unless the council, you're considering that right up front as opposed to an afterthought.
My second question is in regard to those two residences. First part of that question is there anyone living there?
There will be employees living there.
And they'll be not just utilizing the facility, they'll actually be living there.
Correct. There is a insufficient, the housing for employees is very difficult to find in Walworth County. For all of the, I've had many resort owners and restaurant owner clients since I was practicing, and that's a big, big problem, is getting places for them to reside. And so this allows us, what will we have, maybe 4 or 5, a house, or 3?
Yeah, well,
Or a house.
in
It's
one-
not a lot, but boy, is of great benefit.
One employee currently works for us that lives in one of the homes, and in the other 2 homes, we have 4. And that's more of a short term for some employment projects that they're doing over the next 2 or 3 months.
Are they rentals or do you provide the housing?
It's both scenarios. Some of it's renting, that's paid. Other scenarios I could see in the future would just be provided as a benefit to the employees.
They are registered with our rental program right now.
Unless something's changed, I believe that the city does have an ordinance requiring city water for any properties within the city limits.
Right, and generally, there's a period of time that you can hook up from when the time the water is provided. You know, the issue is that we're just gonna tear it. These aren't permanent residences, so to, again, run the laterals in, there would be a variance from that. I think that is proper in this type of a zoning, where you can get variances that they don't have to hook up. And that would be something that we would consider that,
I'm not
may
aware
know.
that the city has ever granted a variance like that, but question for Mark, I guess you know, I'm gonna throw it at you anyway. From an engineering standpoint, any thoughts about providing, and I use the word cautiously, temporary water service?
Because I'll pass that to Nick, who's our water person, so.
Can you repeat the question, please?
For these residences, which have the problem with the private well, a number of problems with the private well, are there any engineering options that would allow them to install some type of a temporary system which would hook up to the city main, but not require them to install typically a 700-foot or whatever it is water lateral?
So the water main is roughly about 300 feet from the residence on the south side of Highway 50. Per ordinance 9154 of municipal code, if there is an abutting main, or if there's a water main in the abutting street, they are required to connect per the city ordinance. Which the abutting street would be Highway 50.
Okay, so that ordinance still is in effect. The second part of the question was, are you aware of any possible temporary relief as opposed to putting in a full underground system to get water
We do
from the
not
main?
have any option, no, because the only other option we would have is to run water from a fire hydrant, which is technically non-potable water, and it would also be exposed to elements, which would cause an issue in the wintertime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have one more question for you on that same issue. When you say the water main is 300 yards away, so if they hook up to the city water, do they also have to hook up to city sewer as well, or can they keep the same arrangement?
So we've given them 2 options. It's one to connect to the sanitary sewer that was ran across the airport, which dead ends at the east side of the parking lot of the airport. And or possibly, allow them to have a holding tank on the site if that was approved through Walworth County. Because we don't give that approval, that'd be through Walworth County. That would eliminate the need for DLSD service, and then that would also give them a temporary solution to not having to run, because that would be about a 700 to 800 foot run to get to that sanitary sewer.
They're hooked up now, is my understanding.
No, they're hooked up to the DLSD lift station.
Right.
Yeah, so
But
they-
to disconnect from the DLSD, those would be the two options that you would have, that you would have to.
So they'd have to, either way, they'd have to disconnect from DSLD.
I believe the agreement that was signed when they were annexed stated that they had to disconnect from DLSD.
It's my understanding that that was a requirement of DLSD, not the city. And DLSD has indicated that they would extend that period of time from us to disconnect, if that's all right with the city. But that eliminates, again, having to do a system for something we're gonna tear down. And we have no problem with doing a time limit, that if that's the case, that you'd have to get acknowledgement from DSLD, or DLSD, would agree to allowing that to continue.
Any other question?
Part of that is that they have to disconnect because of the TID. DLSD cannot be serving part of the TID. So if you don't, then the rest of the project over there at your clubhouse or harbor club is gonna be non-contiguous. So we lose that parcel, we lose that parcel.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Right, any other citizens in attendance that wish to speak at this time regarding this issue? Seeing and hearing none, then I would close the public hearing and move on to item 4.2, which is consider a planned infill development amendment to the official zoning map for a step 3 general development plan GDP for 28.92 acres of the property located at 2525 East Geneva Street, tax parcel XWUP00240 to allow for outdoor storage and other non-agricultural land uses in the rural holding RH35AC zoning district. Applicant again, Richard Torhorst for KSP Family LLC. And I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve proposed GDP subject to the findings and conditions as listed.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, any further discussion?
That's the motion is to approve the original agreement with what conditions?
The conditions are GDP shall remain in effect for 5 years from the date of approval. After such time, this GDP approval shall expire. At that time, the city and the property owner shall renegotiate a new PID, or the city shall rezone the property to a standard zoning district. The applicant shall install landscape screen buffer no later than May 1st, 2024, to the satisfaction of the city. The applicant shall provide parking lot lights for employee parking to ensure employee safety after dark, illumination level of between 0.4 and 1.0 foot candles is recommended. Portable, or battery powered lighting would be acceptable. No storage or other development is approved for the area labeled future expansion area for additional outside storage. And maintenance on exhibit B. Applicant shall revise exhibit B accordingly. The approved uses are permitted only in the locations depicted on exhibit B as approved by common council. The GDP for the proposed project shall be granted solely as approved by the common council. The approved GDP shall grant the requested flexibilities described in the proposed PID flexibility section above. Prior to any site changes, a precise implementation plan PIP consistent with the approved GDP must be secured for any developments on the property indicated as part of the project site. modifications to the site and or operations that are not specifically enabled by the approved GDP and PIP will require an amended PIP and potentially an amended GDP for the city's determination. The city shall retain the right to inspect the subject property, including within the buildings, annually to ensure full compliance with building code, zoning ordinance, and GDP and PIP, and other governmental regulations. Inspection for compliance with the fire code will occur twice per year. The property owner shall add a dumpster enclosure to be approved by city staff. To vest the approved GDP of revised complete GDP that is consistent with all the required modifications listed above, and any other identified by the plan commission and or common council shall be submitted to the city for final review and approved by city staff. Any other conditions identified or modified by the plan commission and or common council.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So I am, I'm aware that it's more beneficial for you to have something longer than a 5-year plan. But in my experience, I found that putting sunsets in place are more beneficial to the city. It gives us a sense of what's happening and it doesn't let bad actors just run rampant over policy and anything else along those lines. Now, we do have a lot of flexibility and at times change. So I think 5 years is a reasonable amount of time for you to figure out what you want to do with the space and then move forward from there.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Deezer. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 5, the public hearing to review and possible recommendation regarding KSP Family LLC. 5.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider a planned infill development, step 4, precise implementation plan, PIP, at 20.
Someone just left.
Oh, sorry. PIP at 2525 East Geneva Street, tax parcel XWUP 240, located in the rural holding RH 35AC zoning district to allow for single-family residence and outdoor storage, land use applicant KSP Family LLC. With that, we'll open up the public hearing and start with staff. You want to add?
You still make sure? Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess Jackie's not gonna show it, so. Yep, so this is just a continuation, same property. I don't know if there's too much I need to expand on it. I guess we'll just start with the applicant.
No, we would just submit the same conversation that we had before.
Right. Do you want me to stay up here in case you guys have questions?
Did any additional questions as it relates to the PIP? That's
So to get back to our water question, I understand they have to connect from DFLD. So we either have to hook up the sanitary sewer or get a permit from Walton County to put a holding tank in, is that correct?
That is my understanding through the developers agreement. Correct, Mark? That's how that came about?
Harbor Club, yes, correct.
Yeah, so that's part of the developers agreement, which I believe is listed under one of those conditions. At the bottom of your packet.
Any other questions for staff? If not, we'll refer to the petitioners, but I think you had said that you kind of.
No, we have nothing.
Nothing more further to add, okay. Any questions from commissioners for the petitioners? Did we have anyone joining us, virtually? Okay, I wasn't sure Jackie was joining us. I know, Kevin had shared that he couldn't attend. He also did, I don't know if he shared with staff, but he did share with be a couple of questions that had he been here, he would ask, as it relates more to the PIP. And those couple questions here are, just, what is the long-term plan for the marina boat storage? Maybe you could hit on that just a little bit. That was one of his questions.
Well, short term is the area that we're talking about right now, which is the area closer to Highway 50. Obviously, when we put together development for the whole larger parcel of the farmland, we most likely would incorporate some type of indoor storage, maybe some outdoor storage in a different location farther away from Highway 50.
Another question he had was, is it related to the screening? It was recommended the Arba Vita, and his thought was that given that plant is one of the most eaten shrubs by deer, will that be an effective screening in the area surrounded by ag land? And so I don't know what your thoughts are on that, or if you're open that if there is certainly a problem with the Arba Vita, that we can
Yeah, well, we were trying not
work
to,
through that and maybe find, so.
yeah, absolutely. Work through the right type of vegetation to plant there. But the goal is to have something that's about 6 feet tall, to be able to block that off of the frontage area viewable from Highway 50. Currently, all the other neighboring property is similar entities, so there's no other view concern from the other areas outside Highway 50.
Sounds good. And then, just to piggyback on that a little bit, do you have a general idea of what the time frame for completing the screening might be?
That was something we wanted to get done as soon as, if we had approval today, we had approval with the city council. I think our goal was to get that done in 60 days.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other, Will?
Question probably again for staff, with the proposals that have been presented here, and future proposals. Is there any issue with Department of Transportation regarding the current access to the property?
Not that we know of. No.
All right. Any other questions for the commissioners? From the commissioners? Anyone else in attendance, any other citizens wish to speak on this issue at this time? Seeing and hearing none, with that, I would close the public hearing and move on to item number 5.2, which is again, consider a proposed step 4 precise implementation plan, PIP, for 28.92 acres of the property located at 2525 East Geneva Street, tax parcel number XWUP 00240, to allow for outdoor storage and other non-agricultural land uses located in the rural holding RH 35AC zoning district. Applicant Richard Torhorse for KSP Family LLC. And I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to recommend the common council approval of the proposed land use at 2525 East Geneva Street, subject to the requirements of the submitted application, subject to the requirements of the general development plan PID zoning and the general city of Delavan zoning ordinance, and subject to the conditions as listed in the report and identified by staff, city staff and the planning commission. All the conditions are listed as 1 through 13.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
In the conditions, there's nothing about them having to hook up to city water.
That's part of the city ordinance.
Okay, so they're asking for the exemptions.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 6 is public hearing to review and possible recommendation as it relates from the city of Delavan. 6.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider updates to the violations and penalties section 24.936 of the zoning code to increase the standard penalty amounts. Applicant, again, the city of Delavan. And I would open the hearing at this time and start with staff.
So yeah, this is in regards to, our penalties and fees. It hasn't been updated in quite a few years. I feel that, from a residential standpoint, that the $250 is a pretty good motivator for people. Staff, most of the time, our goal isn't to find people, it's to get compliance. But sometimes with some of the commercial buildings or commercial run businesses, I know in the past we've had some like issues with strategic materials, which they've kind of fixed that, but it took us a long time to get that. And sometimes that $250 is such a small fee in their big scheme of doing business. So I'm kind of looking from my standpoint where if I have someone that's violating our code multiple times, that I can up that fee, or if it's their second offense or third offense, that it could be more. But like I said, this usually it's not a problem 90% of the time, but sometimes with these bigger corporations, it takes me quite a long time to get their attention. So that was the main thing with looking behind this.
Okay, do you have a scale or? Decide when they get 50 or 1,000?
Right, so right now, the way that it's written, it's like, I think it's $10 is the minimum and $250 is the maximum. And then obviously I write a citation and then it goes to the court. And then at that point, it's up to the judge to do what he wants to do.
Okay.
So.
Will?
Are there any state guidelines here?
Yeah, I know that some of the other communities, and I could look into looking at more, but I know a lot of them, they, at a bare minimum, they can, usually it's like second offense, it gets doubled, third offense, it gets tripled. And then usually there is like a maximum of maybe like 1,000 or something similar to that. It's just, we're just at the 250 and we've been there and just, like I said, from a residential standpoint, if I come to a homeowner and it's a $250 fine, I get their attention pretty much right away. But a lot of times, especially these corporate companies where I'm not dealing with maybe the person that's exactly in charge, it could take like a month. Or sometimes they just look at me and say, $250, we make, $50,000 a day here. We're just gonna write it as part of our business plan. So.
I'm less concerned with local communities and more just my thought was, has the state issued any
I can look into it, but I'm
guidelines
not,
or directives?
yeah, I'm not aware of it, but I can definitely look into that.
Yeah. Might be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Any other questions for staff? My only question, I know you had said it's been a while. Do we have any kind of an idea? Mark, I'm looking at you. When this was last updated?
Probably the original Vanderwall code, which was 1992.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff?
Typically, when you issue a fine, what dollar amount do you issue?
Usually if I'm issuing a fine, it's the maximum, the 250, but I can say that they've been warned multiple times before they get that fine. So pretty much by the time they get a fine, it's because they chose to ignore us.
Typically, when it goes before the judge, what does the judge do?
I don't always find that out, but I know sometimes he does throw it out or he reduces it in half. I can say sometimes from staff, it's a little frustrating because I know how much time it takes us and effort to put into it. And then by the time they get to court, they'll say they're complied and like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's taken a lot of time staff, so sometimes I feel like staff's time doesn't really get covered for that.
So it can be thrown out completely?
I believe it could, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for staff and the petitioner? If not, are there any other citizens in attendance who wish to speak on this issue at this time? Seeing and hearing none, I would close the public hearing and move on to item 6.2, which is consider updates to section 24.936 of the zoning code relating to penalty amounts. Anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to recommend to the common council to increase the penalty amounts within section 24.936 to a minimum of $50 and a maximum of $1,000 per violation per day.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So I think that there's a lot of leeway, especially considering that the judge can weigh in and reduce the fine if it's an extreme circumstance. So this wouldn't be something that would necessarily impact our citizens on a daily basis. And this is something that the dollar amount could actually help drive compliance to get things done, which is the purpose, not the fine. So making sure that this is tied in with the warnings is probably a good idea to try and get business accomplished.
And I was just gonna, say that I think that with the situation that we had with Lake Lawn across the street, I think if our fines would have been higher, I think they would have gotten here a lot quicker than what they did. So, because it took a while for the people up high to realize that they were gonna have to pay a fine if they didn't come into compliance. So.
Sounds good. Any other discussion? Yes, Will.
Notwithstanding the outcome of the vote on the motion, I would appreciate it if staff did follow through and see if there are some other guidelines that we should be considering.
That's a good point. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 7 is business. There's no other business at this time. Item number 8 is the building inspector's report. Any questions as it relates to the building inspector's report?
And you know, if you guys have any specific questions on the zoning things that I wrote in that report.
I just have your last one, responding to the zoning and utility questions about the residential zone property on the east side of Wood Road. What were the questions?
It had to do with Alliant, Tracy, yeah, that one's Tracy. Yeah, so Tracy Group, there's just, we've had some calls as to what people can do in that area. And then also over, the lots that are near where Myers would be, those outlots, we've had some more interest. There's not necessarily that, someone's gonna be doing anything, but we've had a lot of calls. I don't know I believe they might have recently, listed those, or they were gonna be listing them, so we've had quite a few calls on them.
Any other questions?
How's Toronto going?
Well, they've got their, the 2 4 units are, under roof right now. And one of them is, in the process of being drywalled. The other one is, the rough stages still. And they have a duplex, that's gonna be under roof probably by the end of the week. That's on, the one's on Autumn Drive. And then the one that we have on Phoenix, we're hoping by the end of March to have a roof, on the first 77 unit building. And then, the second one is just, it still just has the foundation, the footings and the foundations. So, but they are moving. I'd say they're starting to move along a little quicker than they have in the past. They kind of had a slow start, so.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, then I would move on to item number 9, which is adjournment, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All right, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor of adjournment, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.